Welcome to Narrative A, a little introduction to Italy. This is your first paragraph reading, and so I just want to say a few things about translating and reading Latin in general before we get into the specifics. The thing you want to watch out for is imposing English or your assumptions about English onto the Latin. So if we look at that first sentence, Italia agros et agricolas habet, you might be tempted to say Italia means Italian, and it goes with agros, Italian fields, and then go from there. You've got to make sure that your Latin asserts itself and trumps your English. So your Latin tells you, and you know this, you've just got to make sure to stop and think about it. Your Latin tells you that Italia is nominative, and that's going to be the subject of your sentence, and that agros and agricolas can't be nominative, and are actually accusative, and so we're going to be the objects of the sentence. But knowing that Italia is nominative and that agros is accusative should, and you'll get better at this as we do more practice, but should tell you that Italian fields can't be correct. So, as you're going into reading Latin, make sure that your English assumptions don't override what you know about Latin. I'm going to break sentence 2 up into its two halves, with the et being the break point. Natura aquam cibumque dat et, ... We'll come back to that. Similar to the Italia agros, you want to make sure that you don't put natura and aquam together. Another common assumption, another common English assumption, is when you have two nouns together in Latin, like natura and aquam, to put an apostrophe s after the first one. So to say something like nature's water. Okay, but again, your Latin should tell you that those two things don't go together. We've not really done a lot with the genitive case so far. The genitive is the case that shows possession. That would be that apostrophe s in English. But what you do know is that natura is nominative and that aquam is accusative. So translate them accordingly. The et, the conjunction, and, is an important word. And all conjunctions will function like this. We actually have two in this sentence. Que, on cibum, is connecting aquam and cibum. A good little trick for quack, it's a little tricky because it goes on the end of the second word, is the thing about peanut butter jelly que. I know that sounds a little funny, but in English we'd of course say peanut butter and jelly. If Latin were saying that, it'd be peanut butter jelly que, or peanut butter et jelly. You don't really need the illustration for the et. So peanut butter jelly que is a good way to remember where the que goes and how it works. And make sure you're not thinking peanut butter and jelly que, because now you're actually doubling up the conjunctions, peanut butter and jelly. So just peanut butter jelly que. But what conjunctions do in general is show you the structure of a sentence. So rather than seeing aquam and cibum as separate accusatives, the que tells us we can take them as a unit together, a unit of direct objects. The et now connects clauses. So we've got verb dot followed by conjunction et, and that's going to be a pretty clear sign that we're going into a separate or a new clause. So the way I'm dividing this sentence, you can do that as well. You deal with natura to dot, that's one discrete unit. Then et connects the first to the second, and then you deal with bellum to terret, which is the next unit, and I'll talk about that in a sec. So in the second half of sentence 2, we're going to introduce a different kind of assumption, actually a Latin assumption. So bellum, that first word, and we've seen in the previous two sentences how the first word is the subject, Italia in the first sentence, natura in the first half of this second sentence, then both followed by accusatives, agros in the first sentence, agros and agricolas really in the first sentence, and aquam and cibum in the second sentence. So in this second half of the second sentence, that pattern remains. The tricky part, or the trickier part, is bellum is a neuter noun. And as a neuter noun, it's going to have the same nominative ending, um, as accusative ending, um. Now the accusative un is fairly predictable. That's the more common use of that um ending. The nominative um is the less common use of that um ending. What you have to watch out for is not seeing that um and assuming that it is accusative. You have to fight that instinct to say, oh, that's definitely an accusative. Most of the time it will be an accusative. But if you're dealing with a neuter noun, it can be, and in this case is, a nominative. And so bellum is going to be your subject. Further reminding you of that, or further helping you see that, is right next to bellum is pueros and puellas. Those are two distinct accusatives. They have to be accusatives. That os and as can't really be any other ending. So if you've got two definite accusatives, then that suggests as well that bellum probably isn't going to be another accusative, especially without a conjunction. All right, in this third sentence, we vary the structure up a little bit. Now, this is one of those things about Latin word order that you'll have to get used to. A lot of people think that Latin word order is random, that words can just go anywhere in the sentence. That is not entirely true. It is certainly more flexible than English word order, but it's certainly not random. In this sentence, however, we have a variation on that subject, object, verb structure, which the previous sentences have used. In this particular case, we're starting with locum, and if you check your vocab, you'll see that locum, that um ending, cannot be a nominative. It has to be an accusative. Because it is locus, loci, the nominative will be locus, that locum cannot be a nominative. So the place is not doing anything. Something is being done to the place, or someone is doing something to the place. Just like pueros and puellas in the previous sentence help you realize that bellum is a nominative because they're definitely accusatives, and that means that bellum might not be another one. Weary and feminae in this sentence help you see that locum is not a nominative. They are both nominatives. They can be other things, but certainly together with that que, it suggests that they're nominative. So you've got weary and feminae as your nominative and locum as your accusative. You'll also notice that the verb laudant is plural. That nt makes it plural. If it were singular, it'd just be laudat with that t. That plural verb further reinforces that your subject has got to be plural. They have to agree. We never say we is or they is, right? That's a plural subject with a singular verb, or vice versa. And locum is singular, whatever case it is. It can't be a plural with that ending. So weary and feminae are plural, nominative, and they then match up with laudant. In this final sentence, we've got a third sentence structure, a third pattern for how the words are put together. The first word in this sentence is, of course, the verb, and that T ending signals that it has to be the verb. Then you've got your subject and your object following that verb. Now I'm going to let you do this one a little bit more on your own. I've identified the verb. Is fortuna the nominative or accusative? Is populum the nominative or the accusative? One is going to be nominative, one is going to be accusative.